they're looking for good management, but they're not looking for visionary people. They're looking for honest, good, well-run companies that are not super risky, that are profitable, and that are growing.
So we have a problem in that when it comes to private equity, most business owners, most founders, they get this very wrong. They only find out about how private equity works after they've signed a term sheet, and that's just a disaster waiting to happen. So today, we're going to look at what buyers are really looking at and how to structure your deal correctly, the questions you should be asking, and what you need to know before you even consider private equity. So today with our guest, we're going to walk through what you should be doing as a seller to prepare your business, what private equity firms are looking for, and just an understanding of what some of those terms really mean so that you can go into this conversation informed. What we're also looking at is the best way to actually go about it. And as we always say, the best way to go about learning a new skill is to actually engage the person with the experience to help you through that process. So today, I'm Paul Sweeney, hosting the Business Behind Your Business podcast, and I'm joined by Alexis Sikorsky, and he's going to help us understand what we mean by private equity and why it's different to other forms of funding. We're going to tap into Alexis' experience because there's quite a lot there. Strategic advice to founders who want to scale and exit their business, but he's also coming from a position of strength because Alexis has founded, scaled, and sold a business, New Access, a Switzerland-based software company, ultimately closing a $100 million plus exit, which is pretty powerful position to come from. And now he's in a position where he's giving advice through KnightScale Partners to founders, helping them get through this journey and helping them achieve great outcomes. Typically working with businesses doing 5 million plus turnover of revenue, looking to engineer their next chapter or their exit. So Alexis, welcome to the Business Behind Your Business podcast.
Thanks for having me, Paul.
It's great to have you here, and it's great to have somebody who's already gone through that process themselves to help us understand I guess the key steps that we need to take if we're going through or considering private equity. But I guess the first step we need to consider or understand is, what is private equity and how does it differ from venture funding or startup funding?
Well, first of all, private equity is not funding. That's the common misunderstanding. There are cases where you use private equity for funding, but it's very late stage and it's for larger company. But mainly private equity is exiting your company, right? So it's a completely different approach than venture capital. So to give an analogy, VCs are gamblers, right? It's very simple. Every VC fund want to fund 100 companies, hoping that 2 of them will be the next WhatsApp. That's the model of VC, right? High risk, small amounts, lots of companies. That's the concept of venture capitalists. So what venture capitalist is looking for, it's an idea. It's a concept, and it's mainly management quality. It's what they're looking for. Like when I talk to my VC friends, my brother has a VC in Israel, so I have contact with VC. VC is definitely not my area of expertise. To be honest, I don't understand anything they're doing. But basically what they said, there are 3 criteria because before they invest is management. It's the quality of the founder. That's what they're looking for. They barely look at the project because they know you're going to pivot like 3 times your Airbnb. You made your money by selling cereal bar at some point. So they don't really care about that. Private equity, you have to think about private equity like a real estate play. It's all about the leverage. The thing with private equity is they are doing a terrible job communicating. So they achieve 2 things. They manage to make you believe their business is very complicated by using ton of jargon, ton of acronyms, and they're going to talk about mezzanine and ROI, and they're going to throw a lot of acronym at you, and it's actually a very simple, it's a leverage play. Basically, they borrow money from the bank to buy your company. They're hoping the company will grow, and just by waiting to pay back the loan, that's how they make most of their money. So it's a very simple leverage play. Think about like you buy a building, you borrow 80% from the bank, you pay 20% cash. When you reimburse the bank, suddenly you multiply 20% by 5. Private equity is exactly that. So it's completely different universes. And they're not looking for great ideas. They're looking for good management, but they're not looking for visionary people. They're looking for honest, good, well-run companies that are not super risky, that are profitable, and that are growing. So they're looking for completely different things.
So we've got quite a contrast there between venture capital and you did mention that they are aligned with that whole risk. They like risk. They like taking a gamble on your abilities. Because you don't, at that early stage, you don't have the proof. You don't have the proof of your earnings. You don't have the proof of the concept necessarily, or the proof of, profit. But they are taking a gamble, and they're spreading that risk over many different organizations. Whereas private equity, looking at the other end of the spectrum, a lot more scrutiny about how good the quality of your business is, and they're wanting a guaranteed return. So they're looking for high quality management, high quality proof of product, proof of revenue. So if that's the case, why do so many people get this wrong when they approach private equity?
Just to be a little more accurate, VC is changing a little bit. It's not 2016 anymore. Now you struggle to get pre-revenue money. So you get pre-profit, but now even with VC, they want to see traction, they want to look revenue. So it's a little less of a gamble than it used to be, unless you have a very strong proven track record, and then you can call a VC and say, I have an idea, can I have $1 billion? If you are like in AI or stuff like that. But now even VC are looking for a bit of stability and some revenue. The reason, to answer your question, the reason they got it wrong is because PE are really, they suck at explaining what they do. I don't really know why. And so there's so many common misconceptions of what PE is. Like you talk to any founder, they say, oh, they're going to come and buy my company and fire me. No, they might if you don't do your job well, but that's not what they're looking for. They're not in the business of running companies. A typical private equity fund will have a 10-year lifespan, and they'll take 2 years to raise the money, 3-4 years to invest, and 3-4 years to exit. So that's something you really have to understand is their time horizon. That will vary if you are like early in the fund or late in the fund. They can have like 5 years with you, or they can have 3 years with you. But anyway, it's always going to be a short period of time. That's something you have to understand. And they will invest in 8 to 10 companies. So they have to look carefully to what they're buying. So what private equity is buying is two things. They're buying EBITDA. You do not get a PE deal if you're not making money. There are counterexample, and I can see people messaging and say, oh, I know of, yeah, there are counterexample. You also have distressed private equity, which are very specialized, but mainstream private equity, they're buying EBITDA and they're buying growth. That's what they're buying. So they're misunderstood because they don't explain themselves well. I talk with them, tell them that all the time.
So we're saying that the private equity firms are not explaining what they're looking for clearly enough, which I guess if they're not doing that, we're probably having too many conversations with people that really the answer should be no before they start. But perhaps they're not explaining what they need so that a business owner can't position their business to be attractive to a private equity firm. Would that be a fair assessment?
100%. Like, first of all, you need to know, one, can you be sold to a private equity? And two, do you want to be sold to a private equity? It's a very different exit from a private equity to a strategic partner. So that's a conversation I have with all my clients. Is private equity the good exit for you? Or is, for example, do you want to sell your company to Apple? Pros and cons in both models, but very different models. If you sell to a private equity, you have to be ready to keep running your company, right? When you were founder and CEO, you're going to be running your company as a CEO in most cases, but you need to understand something, and that's a wake-up call for lots of people. People say, "Oh, I'm worried if I sell to private equity, I'm going to lose control." No, don't worry about it. You're going to lose control. You're selling your company. So I think English people say you cannot have your cake and eat it. It's exactly that. You're selling to a private equity, you're actually selling your company. So after the moment this money hits your bank account, and believe me, it's a good moment, when that happens, suddenly you're an employee, you're not the boss anymore. So you have to make your peace with that. If not, don't sell to a private equity. Well, if not, don't sell, because strategic is even worse. Strategic, you're out pretty much.
So I guess a lot of business owners like to start their business because they like that control, they like that freedom. But selling to private equity, you mentioned that you'll often be required to keep running the business for the private equity. So you then go to that position of being an employee, which is sort of counter to why a lot of people start their business, where they like to be in charge. But there's a lot more accountability to a private equity owner. And that's going to cause a lot of issues for business owners to move from that position where they are in control to being fully accountable to an external party.
Well, I can only talk about my experience there. That was the best day of my life. Like, you know what? So I sold after 15 years, basically. And I sold and went back home that night. And for the first time in 15 years, I slept. It's not my problem anymore. Like, I have different problems. And so basically, when you're a founder, and again, I'm not talking about serial founders, but when you're a founder, pretty much every day you grow your company, it's a prototype, right? When you reach your first million revenue, it's the first time you run $1 million company. If you reach your first 10 million, it's the first time you run a 10 million company, etc. When you hit, like, I remember when I hit 500 employees, I was like, oh my God, like, how do I manage 500 employees? I had no idea. Private equity do that all the time. So they know they're here to help you. And one thing you also have to understand is, usually when you sell to private equity, they will want you to keep some minority position in the cap table. So in my case, I sold 77% and kept 23%. So now your interest 100% aligned with the private equity, right? Because they want to grow the value of their shares, and they do that, they grow the value of your shares. So as a shareholder, your interests are aligned, and as a CEO, you're now an employee.
So two very big changes there. So you're now an employee when you were the person calling the shots, but also you don't get that. It sounds to me that you're not getting a complete sale. You're still invested in your company and still bound by certain conditions about performance and expectations. It's not like you can sell to private equity and then walk away completely the next day. You still got an ongoing commitment.
It happens, but it's uncommon. But having said that, if the private equity is smart, and mine was, you don't have any commitment. You're just an employed CEO, and anytime you want to leave, you leave. Sometimes they lock you for a year or two, but they tend to lock key people, but not you, because you cannot force a CEO to stay. So if you're in disagreement with their strategic focus, they usually we'll let you go. But having said that, all we're discussing now, you have to discuss it beforehand with the private equity. And the main question is going to be, what is my level of autonomy after as a CEO? Like, do I have to call you? What is the list of stuff I have to call you about? And that, in my case, for example, I had a very high level of autonomy as long as I understood one concept, which is time horizon. Like any project I would submit to them that had a time horizon of more than 3 years, they say, no, thank you. That's not for us, that's for the next guy. They said, you're gonna sell this project to the next guy when he's gonna be at the very beginning and he will have 5 years. Now we have 2-3 years left. Your project is too slow for us. So that was the main thing we disagreed on.
So those two things that you've just mentioned, so the time horizon, but also how much autonomy you have as the CEO, important things to understand right at the beginning. What other kinds of, I guess, red flags or issues do founders ignore when they're approaching private equity?
Well, what amazes me the most, well, I say it amazes, I'm being a bit dishonest because I didn't do it at all, but I don't understand why people don't do a due diligence on the private equity. That's like the number one thing you do. Very often you get called, right, from private equity, and you eliminate the obvious red flags. Like the guy say, oh, I'm a private equity, I love your company. Yeah, but who are you? Well, at that point, I'm not really telling you. And I said, well, then go F yourself if you don't tell me who you are. That's not how private equity operate. They don't operate stealth. So if somebody won't tell you who they are, it's a big red flag. But so you get the phone call, or if you prepared, you actually initiate the phone call, which is much better in my opinion because you come prepared. You have your pack, you have your virtual data room ready, you know who you call. That's very important because you have specialized private equity, generic, you have and you need to know their sweet spots. Sorry, I'm taking a bit of a segue here, but it's super important and it's super easy. You need to know their sweet spot, which is how much what's the good amount for them to spend on a deal. And it's actually super simple math. You take the total amount of their fund, which is usually public, divided by 10 multiplied by 4. So you divide it by 10 because you figure out they're going to be 10 investments in the course of the thing. And then you multiply it by 4, which is their leverage, because they're going to put 25% and the bank's going to put the 75%. So if you have a 100 million fund, basically, you know their sweet spot is around 40 million. More like 30 because they want to keep a margin for built up. But basically, like very simple math. So if your company is valued at 200 million, don't call these guys. And if your company is valued at 10 million, don't call this. Well, if your company is valued at 10, don't call anybody. But if your company is valued at 10, you don't call people who have a sweet spot at 40 because you're too low. That's happening to me right now. It's like I have a fantastic company that I would like to buy, and I'm talking to private equity, but the company valuation is 50, and I cannot find, to save my life, a private equity who want to do a 10, 15 million ticket. They say it's too small for me. So that's tricky.
So the whole idea of doing a due diligence review tends to be that we think of that as the purchaser or the buyer of the business will do the due diligence on the seller. But what you're saying here is that as the seller getting your business prepared, you should do your due diligence on who's available to actually purchase your business and how do they work, what are they looking for, are they going to be a good fit?
100%. I'm gonna even tell you how you do it because it's that simple. So they're gonna do, and when you say they're gonna do a due diligence on you, it's an understatement. I call it the 6-month colonoscopy. It's 6 months. Sometimes it's 3, but it's usually minimum 6 months, and they're gonna look everywhere. Like if you have anything you think they won't see, you won't. They'll find it. They'll find everything. They come with lawyers, accountants, they're really good at that. It's their bread and butter. And they don't care spending $500,000 and after $500,000 saying, oh, no, I don't like it, I'm out. They don't love it, but they can do it. And by that time, you're dead because you've been working on that for 6 months. You've not been working on your company. You already spent the money in your head. So you really have to come prepared for the due diligence. The way you do a due diligence on a private equity, it's actually super simple. You want to avoid two things. One, you want to avoid assholes. People who are going to make your life miserable, right? You're still working in this company. Is the people you're working for are people, I should not have said asshole, but people whose values don't align with yours. That's a problem that you should find out. And that you get by talking to them. Like, talk to them. They are not salespeople. Again, they'll tell you what they stand for. They tell you what their plan is. They have no interest in going behind your back. It's not what they do. But the main thing you want to avoid is client of mine find this term, which I'm very sad I didn't find it. He called it fish and chip. So that's a relatively common private equity technique where they fish you with a very high valuation and they chip at it during the due diligence. So they say, okay, we have a letter of intent. In the letter of intent, it's 80 million. Now we're going to do the due diligence. And then at the due diligence, say, you know what? There is that we don't like. Actually, now we're offering you 70. And it's very hard to say no to that because you're exhausted. You've been through a 6-month colonoscopy. Then there is 10 of them. There is 20 of them. There is one of you. So like you're exhausted. You started spending the money. You're like, it's very hard to resist this tactic. So you need to be sure. And the way you do it, it's very simple. You're going to call people they bought before you. So, and by the way, tell them, be honest. Tell them, thank you for the letter of intent. I'm going to come back to you in 2 weeks. And during these 2 weeks, I'm going to do a due diligence. They're okay with that. They do it with you. So they're okay doing it. And what you do, you ask them for 5 names of people they acquired. Obviously, you're not going to call these 5 people. Then you go on your website and you call the other ones. You find them on LinkedIn. My technique is always, hey, can I buy you a beer in exchange for picking up your brand on X private equity because I'm in negotiation with them? I'm yet to meet somebody who doesn't want to tell their story. Like, especially when it's a negative story, they'd be super happy to tell you how they screwed him up and everything. So that's super important to do your due diligence. And also auction. I didn't do any of that, by the way. So I'm very smart, like in hindsight, but I didn't do any of that. Like when you get an LOI, so suddenly you have a value, but like, is it the best value you can get? Like pick up your phone and call a few more. That's what I do. Like I say, okay, thank you for your letter of intent. Is it your best offer? Because I'm going to check the market for better offers now. It's normal, it's business, right? Like when you sell your house, if somebody makes an offer, you say, okay, thank you. I'm going to see if I get a better offer and I'll get back to you. So it's you don't have to be stealth with that.
So I think there's there's that fear when you do get to that stage of selling to private equity that you feel like you have to take that first offer or you're locked into that first person that says yes to you. But what you're telling us here is do your due diligence, get other offers, have a look at what's around, check out the full market rather than just taking one person and find out more about them. There's a lot of work involved in that. And I'm guessing, well, I'm not guessing here, I'm pretty certain that, as you said, when you're founding your business, it's generally your first business, you don't have the skills in selling to private equity. You need help with this. And this is where we always recommend you actually get somebody that can advise correctly. That's what you're doing at the moment with, with KnightScale Partners, advising business owners, founders on how to actually go through this private equity process. How do you operate in that sphere? Because I know you refer to yourself as an advisor, not as a coach. What's the difference in your approach?
Okay, Two questions. First of all, I'm not allowed to call myself a coach because a coach is not allowed to give his opinion. And the total amount of time I can survive without giving my opinion is 45 seconds. So that wouldn't work for me at all. And the way we operate, actually, first of all, we come way earlier because it's not about like, we do sometimes come at deal time, but we are weak at that moment. It's too late. You need to come prepare. Like, it takes a minute to build your armies, right? If you call me on the battlefield, I'll get you the best possible deal, but it would not be the deal I would have got you if I was here a year earlier. So basically, we specialize in one moment of the growth of the company. I call it the 10 million plateau. So a lot of your listeners will probably have felt that at some point of their company. You reach somewhere between 5 and 15 million and you get stuck. You get stuck for mainly three reasons. There are other reasons, but three main ones that I pretty much see every time. And you being a finance person, you understand the first one very, very well, is you don't know your numbers. You think you do, but you don't. You don't know what an EBITDA is. You don't know what a nominal EBITDA is. You don't know the valuation of your company. You don't even know your day-to-day monthly numbers. Like, I see so many founders, like, it's like flying a plane without a GPS. Oh, you overshot your airport by 1,000 miles. Too late. Like, you need to make monthly decisions, not yearly decisions, and you need to have good numbers. So that's the problem number one. Problem number two, it's exhaustion. And exhaustion is not just, oh, I'm tired. It's basically you spend lots of time working on what's urgent and not enough time working what's important. And that's super, super key. Or as Topher says, you spend too much time too much time in the company and not enough time on the company. That's absolutely key, and that's a super easy fix. It's really, really, there is techniques and it's an easy fix. And the third one that I think makes us special is you reach the point where you need proper C-level people, but you cannot yet afford C-level people, right? First example, again, you know that very well. At 5 million, you need a CFO. Your cousin who's good with number and who's an accountant, he's probably very, very good. He's just not a CFO. But you don't need a CFO full-time. You just need somebody who can grab value in your numbers, who can free up some capital, who can do some cost cutting, some cost optimization. I was talking the other day to a food company, right? They have a certain line of products and they're number one in Europe on one specific food. And this specific line is actually not profitable for them. So 80% of their revenue goes to a line of business that's not profitable. And the one that's super profitable, they only do 10%. And like, just by focusing on that instead of that, makes a huge difference. And CFO is an example, but you need a CTO, you need a COO, you need a head of HR, you need a head of HR so bad at 5 million. Like, chances are you're really not good at HR. You're not recruiting the right people. The recruitment costs you way too much. You're not keeping your good people, all that stuff. It's so important. And you don't understand your valuation. You don't understand how valuation works. There's so many criteria in evaluation that's like, you need help at that point. So that's the area we actually focus on.
So a lot of that area you're focusing on tends to be, I'm guessing, like at least 12 months, maybe 2 years before you're actually approaching private equity.
So anything more than 4 years, I don't believe in. But that's a general rule in life, except with marriage. Marriage can last a little longer. But any kind of project that's more than 4 years, I'm skeptical. Because, man makes plan and God laughs. So market changes, the environment changes, everything changes. So max is 4 years. and mean is, yeah, I'd say 12 months. 12 months is if your EBITDA is where you want it. 12 months, the last 12 months is what I call in my book dressing the bride, which is basically knowing what private equity want and how you increase. You can considerably increase your valuation by little tweaks, not major, just little tweaks can massively increase your valuation. The main reason is what private equity is very, very, very good at is finding hidden value you don't even know about. Like, very simple example, good chance if you are at 10 million that your sales team is not fantastic, because if not, you'd be 100 million. And they will identify that immediately. So don't hide it, advertise it. Say, oh, by the way, my sales team really sucks. Suddenly you increased your valuation because you told them, I know what you're looking for. I understand your language. I speak your language. They're not going to buy a multiple of the EBITDA. They're going to pretend to buy a multiple of the EBITDA. They're going to buy a multiple of what they call a nominal EBITDA, which is EBITDA normalized to what they think it should be. So I'll give you an example. You fire somebody in November, you still have 10 months of cost in your EBITDA, right? In your bottom line. They don't. They say, okay, this guy's not going to be here next year. So in our nominal EBITDA, we're going to remove that cost. Which means that if you do that before you talk to them, to say, hey, this is my EBITDA, this is my nominal EBITDA, this is why this is my nominal EBITDA, suddenly the values go to you, not to them. It's that simple. So it's really simple tweaks, but it takes a year. Yeah, basically it takes like a few months, probably a year to get ready. You have technical stuff. You need to have your virtual data room. That takes 3 months to do it properly. You need to know exactly what they will ask. And if they come and you sign a letter of intent and they say, this is my virtual data room and all the documents are here, you're scoring really massive points and you're also saving time in due diligence. Again, didn't do any of that, right? So I'm talking in hindsight again.
But you've got a lot of experience in terms of learning from that, and you've been working with founders more recently. If somebody wanted to get in touch with you and learn what they need to do, what would be the best way for them to get in contact with you?
Well, I have one chance in life is I have a complicated and pretty unique name. So find me on LinkedIn. It's pretty easy. My name is not John Smith, so I'm pretty easy to find on LinkedIn. Find me on LinkedIn and get in touch.
Absolutely. And if you're having trouble spelling, don't worry. Pull over and look in the show notes, and we'll put the direct link to Alexis' LinkedIn profile, and also KnightScale Partners, where you can find out more about what he's up to and how he's helping founders approach that private equity decision with confidence and with some surety about how they're actually going to get through that process and make it a great outcome, not an exhausting and regretting the experience, but make it work for you. And use the experience of Alexis and his team. And it is an opportunity. It is an opportunity, and I think you've highlighted some of those opportunities in that. Highlighting the opportunity that's available to a purchaser of your business, and maybe that's not private equity. Maybe you go through this process and think, well, hang on, a strategic buyer might be a better option for you, but at least you've gone through this process informed. And I think there are a lot of opportunities for founders to approach this exit correctly and eliminate some of that stress and exhaustion that tends to happen in those horror stories that we hear. Alexis, is there one area or one thing that a business owner should do now to get started on this process?
Before that, just one last word of wisdom. Don't fall in love with a letter of intent. Half of letter of intent never materialize, right? So a letter of intent, it's a first step. It's not a win yet. So just keep that in mind, especially if you're not prepared and they call you and you don't have people who know how to go from there to there. One thing they want to do, I say the number one thing is get your numbers in place. Get a proper CFO to do your monthly number, because that's the number one thing that private equity will look at.
Absolutely. As an accountant, I'm loving hearing get your numbers right, because it is a source of truth, but also it identifies the opportunities you've got to grow and to capitalize on that value. Alexis, it's been fantastic to hear from you today. Certainly a lot of value in what you've given us, a lot of wisdom, and helping founders avoid some of the pitfalls of approaching private equity. Thank you again for your time today. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you, Paul.